These are a little easier. Alright.
I'm gonna help you.
You're gonna help me?
Yeah.
What are we gonna do?
We're gonna make a TV show.
We're gonna make a TV show?
Yeah.
Do you see? So these are the Focal Trio 6 BEs, and I'm pretty pumped to check them out because I am a massive fan of my Trio 11 BEs that won my entire monitor shootout. However, so many of you were asking about the Trio 6 BEs that I hit up my friends at Focal, and they were kind enough to send me a pair for review and to compare them to the 11s, because really the 6s are probably more appropriate for most people. So today I'm going to unbox these. We're gonna get them set up. They need 40 hours of runtime to break in, so we're gonna let them run for a couple days and round the clock and let them get broken in, and then we're gonna compare them to my Trio 11 BEs, so that way, hopefully, if you're on the fence about which ones to buy, this will really help you out. But I'm really pumped to hear these because the Trio 11s are just, they're so good. Let's get these unboxed. All right. Little pro tip, this took me a while to figure out when I got my 11s, but on these covers, there's a little piece of fabric hanging off of these. Those are intended to pull. So you grab a set of pliers, and you grab onto that, and that's how you pop the cover off to make sure you don't damage the speaker. Just like so. Those are good looking. All right, let's get them set up. Got them set up here. We're just gonna leave them set up here while they get broke in, because obviously I'm gonna have to work in between their break-in runtime. So we'll leave them set up here, and when I'm not working, they'll just be running non-stop around the clock. But I mean, a little Focal Trio stack doesn't look so terrible, does it? It's pretty cool. All right, here we go. Okay, so it's actually been 4 months since the unboxing portion of this video, but that's super awesome because it really gave me some time to really dig into these speakers. When I did my Focal Trio 11 BE video, so many people were like, they're too big for my room, or they're out of my budget, or do I really need the 11s? What about the 6s? What do they sound like? Are they the same? There's hundreds of people asking this. So first of all, Focal sent me these to review. I do not get to keep them. They're not paying me for this video. No one is paying for this video. So let's start with the specs of these monitors. First up, the Trio 6 BE has a frequency range of 35 Hertz to 40 kilohertz. It has an 8-inch woofer, has a 5-inch mid-range driver, and a 1-inch beryllium tweeter. The total power is 450 watts. It has a 115 dB max output. It weighs 44 pounds and costs $3,000 per speaker. Now, if you want to see additional specs, all the rest of the stuff, crossover points and physical dimensions and all that, there'll be links in the description below to go check out both of these speakers. If you choose to pick a pair up, be sure to use those links, and I'd very much appreciate it. Links below. Okay, the Focal Trio 11 BE has a frequency range of 30 Hertz to 40 kilohertz, has a 10-inch woofer. It has a 5-inch and 1-inch mid-range driver, and the mid-range and tweeter is actually identical between both of these speakers, in addition to the crossover for the mid-range and the tweeter. It's a total of 550 watts, has 118 dB max output. It weighs 82 pounds and is $4,200 per speaker. So obviously there's a huge difference in size here and weight. The 11s are almost double the weight of the 6s. Now, if you watched any of my last Focal videos, you know that I was so pumped on these speakers. I still am. I've had them almost a year, and I'm still so incredibly happy with them. The 11s are just, they're so good, so good. Really incredible, actually, that you can accomplish that level of sophistication of a monitoring setup, that level of detail in a monitoring setup in a package that's this much less expensive. I know neither of these are cheap monitors, but really when you're talking about monitors of this level, they're just in a whole different league. So being able to get the same results mix-wise from a monitor that's $2,400 a pair cheaper, that's a huge win. But let's talk about the differences. Okay, so something that seems to be a theme lately with my videos is I get to the editing stage and I have missed some key information that I'd like to have in this video. This video is no exception. So general characteristics of this monitor. Make sure that you go watch my Focal 11 BE video. I'll put a link down below and there'll be a card at the end of this video to watch it when you're done with this one if you want. I'll go in much greater detail in that video about the characteristics of these monitors, and pretty much everything applies to the Trio6 that I said about the Trio11, but let's get through the bullet points. So first, one of the most incredible things is crazy sweet spot. The sweet spot of these monitors is so wide. You can go side to side, front to back, and they sound the same everywhere. Same is true for both monitors. Another thing that is incredible about both of these monitors is the fact that the low-level information, reverb tails, and like that sort of stuff, the depth of the monitor front to back is pretty stunning. They're a very deep monitor. Reach all the way into the back and grab something. Grab the back of the drum room and just, it's delicious. But anyway, I just wanted to jump in here real quick. Make sure if you're interested in these, make sure you go watch my Focal 11 video and my full monitor shootout to really wrap your head around the sound characteristics of these, because I didn't do that great of a job of talking about it, but really this is more about the differences between the 6s and the 11s, so hope that helps. Enjoy the video. Now, the Trio11s do go 5 hertz lower at 30 hertz compared to 35 hertz. This is less of a difference in reality and practical use than I expected. They really do sound pretty thick, and I am someone who's really adamant about needing to hear down to like 30 hertz. I don't need a subwoofer at all with the 11s. The Trio6s, I'd be able to work just fine without it, but I might want a sub. I'm on the fence on if I'd want a sub with these. So if you're someone who is adamant about hearing all the way down to 30 hertz flat, you might need a subwoofer with the 6s. I would suggest putting them in your room and just getting a feel for them and seeing, because they are surprisingly thick for how much smaller they actually are. The other difference is the lower mid-range. The Trio6s feel just a tiny bit thicker in the like 200 to 300 hertz range maybe. Now, luckily, both of these have really good sounding EQs and really usable EQ on the back of them. And so you can really kind of dial them in to what you want. And so making them sound identical was actually super easy in terms of that mid-range. I just dialed a little bit of the lower mids out, and it was great. It sounded exactly the same. Now, the last difference sonically, in my opinion, is that the 6s do sound a little bit smaller. The 11s are huge sounding speakers, and the 6s do sound a little bit smaller, but they don't sound small. In the grand scheme of monitors, they still are a big sounding monitor. The 11s are just so enormous sounding that setting them side by side, they do sound a little bit smaller. Now, both of these monitors have the focus mode, which is a foot switch activated mode in which it turns off the woofers, recalibrates the crossovers to be a full range speaker out of just the mid-range and tweeter. So say on the Trio6s, the frequency response changes from 35 hertz to 40 kilohertz. And when you engage focus mode, it runs the mid-range and the tweeter, and the frequency range then becomes 90 hertz to 20K. And so there is kind of a roll-off of the top and certainly a roll-off of the bottom. Now, I spoke in my other Focal videos how I really expected this to be a gimmick. And what I ended up finding is it was so useful and so wonderful that I took my NS10s down. I've been mixing on NS10s forever for that focused mid-range focus thing, and I didn't need them anymore. And ever since then, I've been running without them, just using the focus mode and the full range on the Trio11s. The Trio6s do exactly the same thing. So you're really kind of getting 2 monitors in one. So what are some of the negatives of the Trio6 compared to the Trio11? I brought this up in my last Focal video, that the focus mode, you have to have a foot switch in order to engage this focus mode. Unfortunately, they don't come with a foot switch. Now, at $6,000 per pair, or $8,400 per pair, they should come with a foot switch because you can't activate this mode without a foot switch. If you're paying $8,400 for a pair of monitors, there's no reason why Focal isn't including a $20 foot switch and a couple $5 cables. Now that said, this is more of a principle thing because another $20 for a foot switch isn't going to break the bank when you're paying this kind of money for monitors. I just think in principle, it should come with it. The only other negative that I have is only about the Trio6. Now, both of these have a standby mode, an automatic standby mode, in which the amplifiers inside automatically go to sleep after they've spent a bit of time not having signal fed into them. I did bring this up in my Trio11 video that when it goes into standby mode, when the amplifiers actually go to sleep, it makes this weird kind of noise. Like it's a very interesting little pop noise. And it's about that loud. It's not super loud, but it's definitely audible. So the issue that I was running into is when I would record a vocal, if I was in a vocal session or recording some soft acoustic guitar or anything like that in which I'd have headphones on for any length of time, after, I don't know how long it was, but somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes, the monitors would go to sleep and they would make that noise while I was recording. So here's where the negative comes in. The Trio11s have a switch on the back to disable this standby mode, and that's great. If you only are mixing, you can leave it on. If you're someone that it doesn't bother you, cool, leave it on, saves power, probably saves wear and tear on the amplifiers. Unfortunately, on the Trio6s, there's no way to turn this standby mode off. And so they will always go to sleep after 10 or 20 minutes of not being in use, but they do make that same sound. That's the only other negative that I have, just something to keep in mind. I literally cannot praise both of these monitors enough. I think they're absolutely incredible. Okay, so who are these for? The 11s can really be too much for smaller rooms. And so this is just a guess, but I think if my room was smaller than maybe 16 or 18 by 16 or 18 and like 8-foot ceilings, that's when I'd probably start looking to the Trio6s. Certainly my last room, which was like 12 by 12 with 8-foot ceilings, the 11s just wouldn't have worked in there. I would have had to go with the 6s. That's about where the cutoff line I think is. The other thing to consider is monitoring distance. So I played around with placement on both of these for how far away the monitor should be before it sounds right. The Trio11s really need to be like 6 or 7 feet away before they start to sound appropriate, before you're actually getting a picture and not hearing the individual speakers. But they sound really good from like 6 feet to like 8 feet away. That's perfect, at least in my room, that's perfect for the Trio11s. The Trio6s need to be a little closer. The sweet spot is like 4 to 6 feet away for the 6s. And then obviously the last deciding factor would be price. The 6s are $2,400 per pair cheaper than the Trio11s. The fact that you can spend $2,400 less and still get like the same thing, be able to mix the same way, still have the same personality, the same vibe, the same depth front to back, the same mix translation. The idea that you could save $2,400 and still get all of those things, I think is incredible. That's a powerful thing. So I think the biggest question to answer is, would I still have chosen the Trio11s had I been given the opportunity to hear both of them first? Now for me personally, the answer is yes. Firstly, my room is huge. It's 24 foot across by 26 foot deep with 12-foot ceilings. And I really needed a pair of speakers that could fill up the room. I've always needed something bigger since I moved in here. The Trio11s do that. The Trio6s are on the small side for this size of a room. And the second reason is I'm addicted to that low end, that like flat low end all the way down to 30 that the Trio11s have. 100% sold on that. It's amazing. And the third reason is one more additional characteristic between the two that I also forgot to mention. Every speaker that I've ever worked on previously, once you start getting it turned up pretty loud, it starts getting some of this compression characteristic. You start hearing the speaker or the amplifiers or the cones actually start compressing because it's getting loud. The Trio11s are one of the few speakers I've worked on, certainly the only speakers I've worked on in this price range where it doesn't matter how loud you turn them. They just sound free and wide open and like hungry for more. and so that's crazy. The Trio6s do have some of this compression character as you really start laying into them. Now both of the speakers are incredibly loud, and the Trio6s are not quiet at all. However, they do have some of this compression character as you really start cranking them, and the Trio11s don't. Those are the reasons why I would still choose the 11s over the 6s. Links in the description to check out both of these if you want to see actual physical sizes, crossover points, all of that kinds of stuff. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions about either of these, feel free to drop them in the comments below, and I'll try to get back to everyone. I cannot recommend these monitors enough, and no one's paying me to say that. I think that they are absolutely incredible. So hopefully this helped you make a decision, and yeah, links in the description. See you guys in the next one. Peace.